Well, it's about time I do a video on my vintage Bucheimer Texan, because this could be considered the classic flat sap for law enforcement in kind of the final days. You know, the last of the golden age for the sap and blackjack with law enforcement, meaning basically the 1960s and 70s. This one looks like it's from about that era, but it's almost impossible to say with these. That's part of the problem a lot of the times. So the Texan was the largest of the Bucheimer saps, at least of the models they regularly produced. So here's a B96M, in other words, a medium Smith & Wesson. It's actually the one that starts chapter 8 of my book, in fact. I think that was the best picture I ended up using. Anyway, you saw the size comparison there. It doesn't seem like a lot, but relative to the size range of these weapons, it really is. See what I mean? And that will give you considerably more impact with a strike. So here's the classic article about blackjacks just as they're starting to fade from use. This is from Black Belt Magazine, 1986. And you can see that the very first sap pictured, sap or jack, is a Texan. And that just speaks to what I was saying about how common this model was. And that makes sense because it still was easy to carry, fit in the sap pocket, not a big deal, but had some extra oomph, as we're about to see. And seriously, that really hurt. Just look at the character that this one's got. So it was the best of both worlds in a way, right? Appealed for all of the reasons that the flat sap, slapper, beaver tail, slapjack, you name it, appealed to cops. The flat profile made it really easy to carry. It was at least less likely than a blackjack to break bone or even leave a mark, but it had stopping power when used properly. Well, all of that applies to the Texan, but it has more power than the typical flat saps. So I could see why officers would gravitate towards it, but there's not one but two vignettes in my book where officers are warned against it because of the extra power it brought. One of them was by the great Masayub. I'm still super excited that he previewed my book for me. Previewed and reviewed, actually. But anyway, yeah, that's what made the Texan a standout. If it was any bigger, it tended to be around 11 inches long. If it was any bigger, then it just wouldn't feel like a true classic flat sap, in my opinion. I mean, they have to keep that pocket friendliness. It's a hand weapon. It's not a baton-sized weapon. There are variations that get into that realm, of course, and we'll look at those in the future. So back to this one in particular, notice the stitching here. Not exactly what was intended there, but gives it an identifying mark. These things were produced in large numbers back in their heyday, so you're going to get some defects. But that doesn't seem to have hurt the integrity of this one, because it looks like it was used a lot and has held up nicely. A lot of those strike marks are linear. Well, you know, these things were used for more than just hitting people. A cop might knock on a bar to wake up drunks, knock on a door, that kind of thing. Using it instead of your hand will definitely get somebody's attention. Now, it sounds much more authoritative. So anyway, great example of a very memorable configuration of a very unique weapon, the flat sap. Thanks.